Antonik, and this was a fun little project that I just completed for primarily for Stampendous, actually, as a decorative painter. So what I wanted to show you was how I did this using this sweet little set here from Stampendous, and these are part of their collection, the SSC 1382 POP, so Pop Ice Cream. And it's one of a series. There is actually a group of dies that you can get with this right here. But as the fact that I'm not a card maker, I am not going to use the die because the die does put a small border on your surface, which I don't want. But there is a large series in these. And the next one is, there's the sweet little flowers. This one is the hydrangea. This one is the bouquet. It's another personal favorite of mine. This is the rose teacup. And this one, which I've already used, so it's a little, got ink on it. But it's the sunflower, and it is on another piece, actually, right here that I had done. So what I'm going to show you today is how I stamp these to get the look that I want, the overlap, without using dies and with the painter. And in this case, these are the ice cream cones, but today we are going to do the backside, which is cupcakes. So I thought it fun that I would basically repeat everything that I had done for the ice cream, I'm going to do for cupcakes. And I'm just going to use the same color palette, the same process. So I'm going to paint this today. And this, of course, absolutely adorable, is the cupcake one. Now, if you use the dies, this shape here, when you cut it out, and the dies will do the same, that shape fits over any of the stamps. So it fits over the ice cream because that is the ice cream, but as you can see, it fits over the cupcake. It will also fit over the shape of the flowers. So it's a great masking tool. It fits over the sunflowers, fits over the roses. So you can just cut one mask out and just continue to paint these however you see fit. And it'll give you the mask so that you can, add the little vases and bottoms on, and then you can add all your fun little additions. So today with the cupcake, I'm going to show you how I created that and the process that we do. And all we need is one masking, which is just the one shape. I quite often use sticky notes. I love sticky notes. But yeah, oh, it did fit. I wasn't sure if it was going to fit, so I just had it on paper because I was playing and stamped. But sticky notes are great because they already have an adhesive on them. So you can just stick them down. But in this case, for this, I have removable glue dots. So what I'll do is I'll put a removable glue dot on the back so that it won't move when I put it down. So what I'm going to show you today is, first off, I'm going to show you how I stamped all these and how I use a mask. And we're going to put our cupcake down on paper. So just your basic acrylic block. And because I'm painting, when I paint these projects, I will use, I use the StazOn or the Ranger archival inks primarily because they are solvent based, fast drying. And when I start adding things like my DecoArt matte mediums, the fluid acrylics, even sometimes like any of the different unique products from DecoArt, there's no risk of bleeding. And I've tried it with several different inks, and these are the two tried and true. If you're going to use any other inks, I always recommend that you give them a try. Test it on something, like in this case here, I'll test it on a piece of paper. Because you're going to test your stamps to begin with anyway. When they're brand new, you always want to stamp them off on a piece of paper somewhere because it just kind of gets you primed and ready to go. The other tools that I'm going to use today is a simple little set that I use all the time for my painting. And they are available on my website. I do have the sets available. And these are just the IPC small point blender, the medium soft flat top mop, which I use for softening all my paints. And I love my little angle shader. This one's obviously seen a lot of use, but I don't want to open my new ones. And you can do any size that you want. I have various different sizes. Maybe you prefer to you know, do your floating with a little bit bigger brush, that's always welcome. But these are the tools that I use. You can use anything that you have at home. Whatever works for you, makes it simple. Sometimes on a bigger piece, I'll use my 1/2 inch angle shader. And I do use, you know, I'll use my regular mops. And because I paint in different mediums, I just like to have one set specific for the fluid acrylics and this specific type of painting. So those aside, you're always going to want to have baby wipes. They're the best tools ever, because after I stamp, I will seal with matte medium, and I'll explain that later as I go. But for now, let's just get this stamped. And so what I'll do is I'll load it up really good with and I like the StazOn. StazOn tends to be a little bit juicier than the Ranger Archival, especially when it's new. So I bounce between the two depending on how well used this one gets. Then I'm going to stamp it down and put a little bit of pressure on it. Make myself on camera. And I should get a nice print, which I did. So if my print is imperfect, there are two of my favorite pens that I will like to use. And these are them. The Identi-Pen is perfect for when we're painting, because you can put this pen over anything that's been painted or any of the mediums and it will stay permanent. It dries, it doesn't move. The microns I love for when I'm working off of paper. And once it's sealed with the matte medium, once I've got all my lines in and everything and I'm happy with it, I seal it with matte medium. If I use the pen over the matte medium, it doesn't stay. So it's a little bit of a, you know, bounce back and forth. Most of my pen work is usually done before matte medium anyway. So I do stick with this, but if I ever have to go back from my micron and I have to go back, I will pull out my Identi-Pen. It has a nice fine edge, which I love. And this is how you can fix any lines, and which I've had to do on a couple of occasions. If you get a line that isn't dark enough, or you know, you're missing a line, you just go and darken it with your pen. Don't worry about your printing. Okay, so now I want to put my cupcake bottom on. So if I were to stamp that right now, I would stamp right over top of the nice frosty icing and everything that's on top of that beautiful cupcake. Gonna wreck it. So this is where my mask comes in. So I get my little thing that I've already cut out, and I'm going to put it in place, and it's got removable sticky notes behind it. So now I've masked this off. So when I stamp my cupcake bottom, it's going to stamp over the mask and it's going to leave what's underneath clear. So let's get that on. Right here. And we'll ink that up. And this is so fun. This is how I build all my little stamped pieces. I make little masks. I use sticky tape to mask off straight lines or a section that I don't want to stamp over. So that should be nice and juicy. So I'm going to kind of line it up so it is going over top, because it is underneath the icing, and the icing is going over top. So I'm just going to kind of line it up right about there. Put my pressure on here. You don't want to rock it back and forth, but you do want to put some pressure on it. And then I'm going to lift. So now it's gone over top of the cupcake, but when I take the cupcake top off with my little adhesive sticky notes, there, it's a perfect cupcake. Now if I want to stamp a cupcake beside it, and I want the cupcake to be underneath, which is what you'll see as we go forward here, I've got them underneath, because I wanted to fit 4 cupcakes onto this piece of wood, is I will put my mask back and I will get my trusty cupcake top back out. And this is how you layer. Stamp, load it up nice and juicy. And I'm going to stamp it again. Get it nice. Perfect. And when I take this off again, see, now it's behind. And then when I go back again to put my other cupcake bottom on, same thing. Put my cupcake. And I love layering these stamps, and the new sets that they have that do go with the dies, they're called the POP, P-O-P. They have the coordinating die set, but they're all used for mixing them around. Like if I wanted to, I could change this and put an ice cream cone underneath it if I wanted to. So let's put my little cupcake bottom on. There. And see, got a cupcake bottom. So I've got my cupcakes layered, and I keep my mask. I'll quite often keep it with the stamp set. You know, I'll put it away with my stamp set as I put all my little pieces away. Always make sure you put all your little pieces back onto there because you don't want to lose them. Nothing worse than losing that one tiny little piece. So when I put this back into the set, I will quite often stick this into the back of, which I've got some, so I'll quite often stick my little pieces into the back of my stamp set so that I have them. Yeah, for safekeeping for later. So once I've stamped my piece, my project, and I've got all my cupcakes on, which I've done right here, the next step would be to take DecoArt's matte medium, and this is where it becomes important. If you've had to go and darken any of these lines, and I'll show you, this is a great way to show you. This is the micron. We'll just put a little squiggle there. And this is the Identipen. Now, if I was to take, say, one of my other pens that I'm not too sure of, beautiful black liner pen, this one is Moltoff. Let's put a line on here. And I don't know, I don't use this one, but I think, depending on the surface that it goes on, as to whether it will actually smear or not. So I take my matte medium and I will cover the entire surface, so it's like varnishing. So I'll take my matte medium and I go over everything. Oh, see it? This Molotov one is smearing a little bit, but it does lead me to believe that if it dried well, it would work. Let's try another pen. Let's see what else I got hidden in my stash here. Art liner from Spectrum Noir art liner. Let's try this one, because we never know. But this is what I do when I have my pens, is I will see, oh, that's working good. Smears a tiny, tiny bit, but if you're very quick, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you're going to go over top of matte medium, like if I was to say, because it will set that as, and then that will dry like in 5 minutes and you can start painting. So put that aside. Let's go back to our piece here. And this is where I'm going to get weird. So now, say if I was to put my art liner, and let's see, maybe I'll put a little circle down here and put matte medium over top, it smears. Whoops, that pen will smear. So this is where you want to be careful. Pen should always dry before you put matte medium on it if you are going to do any ink after you have put the matte medium on. But on the positive side, it can just wipe off. That's why we put matte medium over our entire surface. Okay, that's just a little lesson on the matte medium and pens. Basically, always test on your surface, find what works best, but those are my pens and the paints that are guaranteed. Okay, so painting, I start with my little IPC point blender. And I'm going to take some raw sienna. So we're using the DecoArt fluid acrylics. And you'll probably see me, you know, I'll speed up the camera at certain points, especially when I'm working. But raw sienna. And we only use just a tiny little bit of this paint. I only take like a dot, just a little pinpoint size. Take my brush and my paper towel, very important. And I like to fold it, because I don't want to have a big mess, you know, a big bunched up paper towel. So I'll fold it and just put it up in the corner of my palette. There we go. Put my toys away. I like to get cluttered. For some reason I end up very cluttered. So I'm going to wet my brush, and then I'm just going to roll it to a point on the paper towel. So I'm taking out all the moisture. going to tip into my raw sienna. I'm just going to rouge it out and just create a little puddle. It shouldn't be runny, but then I'm going to treat this like I'm coloring. So I'm going to color my project. So I'm coloring all the bases in, the muffin bases. And if I have a gap, I'm just going to fill that in as well. So just color it in as though you were coloring, and treat this like a marker or a crayon. It's so easy. And we're just going to get that little bit of color in there. I'm not even worried about how much coverage it has, because it's really irrelevant. We're just going to get this color on there. Now, if you did that and you got over your cupcake, which you can barely see right now because of the color, it wipes right off with the baby wipe. That is why we use matte medium. You can go ahead with this without the matte medium, but you know, you risk wiping things off that you maybe don't want to wipe off if you make a mistake. Especially if you're trying different colors. We're not always sure the color that we want. Get these in there very quickly. And there is a worksheet for this. It's free on my website, www.paintingwithdeb.com or .ca. Both will work. Free worksheet. The stamps I carry on my website as well. Definitely for Canadians. I really wanted to focus on making stamps available, as I'm Canadian, getting them available for Canadians. They are available, you know, in some scrapbook stores at a very, you know, minimal amount, depending on what a store wants to carry. But as far as retail, for Canadians to order directly from Stampendous, it's become difficult to do so, and it's a shipping issue. It has nothing to do with Stampendous not wanting to ship to Canadians. It's a cost of shipping issue with with U.S. Post. So okay, so I've done this with the raw sienna. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to take my very, very light Hansa yellow light. So with the Hansa yellow light, I'm just going to put another little drop on my palette, and same as before, wet my brush, pull out a little tiny bit, because I want this very, very, very light. Very, very soft. And we can color. And I'm going to go over everything because it is so soft. It's basically going to become part of the background. You're not even going to notice that these are yellow once we get painting. Okay, so there I've got the yellow in. Very, very soft, very, very light. And what you'll notice when I paint with the fluid acrylics, I like to do layers of colors, and different colors complement each other in how they change maybe the color or the vibrancy when it's all finished. And when I go back onto here to show you, these were all painted with yellow to begin with as well. And they just work themselves into, when I do the floating of the color over top, it just sort of it creates a vibrancy in the color. It's a personal choice for me. I just like to do that. And that's what I like about the fluid acrylics, is the ability to mix and match your colors and tints and layers, because once they're on, they're dry. So whatever I put over top now does not change the color. It doesn't blend with the color that's underneath. It becomes one of the colors, which is really, really neat. So now that I've got this part in, I'm going to go and I'm going to create a background. And what I did with the background is I float around everything. It's just something that I like, the way it adds color into the background and just changes everything without base coating. It's going to turn the background a shade of blue, but you're not really going to notice it. So I'm actually going to go to my larger angle shader, but you can use whatever angle shader is comfortable with you. And I'm going to load my brush, and I'm doing this in the way I would do all my floating and all my projects. Corner load, blend, and you know, when you're not comfortable, start with the outside and go around, and this goes a long ways. Get your color in there, clean your brush, keep going, and you'll often see me, I do move my surface around as I go. If you go over whatever's wet, you do tend to lift it off. But if it dries, you can go back and go over it again, or you can wipe it off with your baby wipe if you've made a mistake. So when it's a little bit watery, that's when I take my little soft mop and I will pounce it very, very slow, very softly, and I'll just pick up some of that water if there's excess water on your piece, and it'll also soften to float a little bit, but don't work at it too much. We just want to soften. We don't want to remove it. And then I'm going to just go all the way around my piece. And it's so pretty. And I'll take my little, just pity pat it very softly along. It just takes off any hard edges. And if you do make a mistake and you think, uh-oh, you know, I did a really bad float, you can wipe it right off. Look at that. There was nothing wrong with my float, but I just wanted to show you that you can wipe your float right off. Let it dry and go back and do it again. So while that dries, we're going to move on to the second part of the shading, which is around everything. And this is where I'm going to speed up my camera, but we're going to float around everything. So now that I've got all my color on, I want to go ahead now and just add my lettering. So what I've done is I found a font I liked on the computer, and I printed the word Cupcakes. And I also did on here, same font that I used for the ice cream, just because I think it's kind of fun. And so any font you like. I don't know what font it is. The software program I used didn't tell me, so I don't know. But, so what I'm going to do is I've cut it sort of around, I cropped it so I could sort of fit it on my piece. And it looks like it's pretty centered. It is. I did round it ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my graphite paper and I'm going to tape this down, because if you tape it down, you don't risk it moving anywhere. So just take some painter's tape. Just because it's a video, I know exactly what's going to happen. It will travel on me. So I'm going to tape it into place where I have it, because I think that's a good little spot. Don't want to cover my word. And I kind of moved it so that I wasn't going through any of the cupcakes with the lettering. I'm going to slide my graphite paper underneath so that it's... And you want to make sure your piece is dry when you do this, because you certainly don't want to get graphite smudge on your project. Then I'm going to take a pen or a stylus. I'm using a pen, that way I can sort of see where I've been. And I am quite close to the top. I'm going to check my... Yeah, it's close up there too. I'm going to tilt it ever so slightly to get that C down a little bit. You don't want to have too close to the top. That looks good. So I'm going to trace it now. And the reason I like using a pen in this case is just so that I can sort of see where I've been. If it was a pattern, like when I do it in the line lettering, like I've done with the ice cream one, I did trace it out and create the lettering so that this way you could use a normal system. Let's have a look. Oh, the P is there. You can barely see it. So there, I've got it all in place where I need it to be. So what I did next, put that all aside, and you know, hang on to my cupcake sign. So next what I did is, because I've got matte medium on here, I opted to use my Identi pen. And what we want to make sure is that this is going to dry really well. We're not putting any more matte medium over this, so it's perfectly fine. If I was going to do more matte medium, which then I would definitely, let it dry for a period of time, or hit it with a heat gun or something just to set it. A spray varnish over top of pens. If you're not too sure, you can hit it with a matte spray varnish. But in this case, the best thing to do is stamp your cupcakes, do your lettering, and then matte medium, and then start your painting. Otherwise, we're going to use this. So I'm going to line my lettering in very carefully. I always use the narrow end. And I'm not going to fill it in with the pen. I want to fill it in with paint, just so it looks a little bit more painted. Now, if you have a really steady hand with your liner brush and the paint, you could certainly just, paint this all in strictly with your liner brush, which I would normally do, but I'm doing this easy. Okay, so the carbon black media paint, where you're going to paint with that. Small drop. And I'm going to need a small brush. So in this case, I've got this neat little full swirl rigger by Dynasty. It's a great little brush for lettering, and I'm almost considering putting it into my set because I think it's a great little brush. So we don't need a lot of water with this brush, but I did wet the brush first and roll it on paper towel to take out the bulk of the water. I think it needs a wash. We won't talk about that out loud. And I'm going to paint in my lettering. And if you find your paint's not moving, then we just add a hint more water, but we don't want it really watery. It doesn't need to be super watery, but you find a consistency that works good for you. And you can really use any black. Now, because I'm fussy, I will probably go back with my liner brush when I finish all of this and just clean those up a little bit, but I think for the most part, they look pretty good. I followed my font around because we're going to add some fun stuff. So now once that's dried, we're going to let that dry for a minute, and it should be fine. We're going to continue on with our shading of the blue, the cobalt teal hue. I'm going to continue with that, because it does go around the lettering as well. Just because I can, it's just creating more blue. And now I did just add a little bit underneath, just because everything's sort of to the left, so of course it's going to be tucked under some of these letters as well. You can go all around it if you wanted to. There's no right or wrong. It's not a crazy crew. We're not creating proper shadows. We're just adding, tints of color here and there. There. Nice and soft. Cupcakes. So now that we've got the lettering in, we've got all our blue shading in, we're going to go and we're going to start our shading process. So this is the base coat process. Very soft little tints of color. Now we're actually going to start creating something with all of this. So I'm going back into my raw sienna, and I'm going to shade all the muffin bottoms with raw sienna full strength, which I didn't do the first time because we just did a very soft wash. So of course, the shading's always going to go underneath because cupcake tops are above. All that frosty icing is above. And I don't go over my floats when they're wet, so I'm going to do all my unders first. And I want to see that color, but I don't want it to be super strong. I don't want a really heavy line. And now this last one, the cupcake is a little lower. There's a little gap in here, so I'm just going to treat it like it's part of the actual cupcake. So I'm just painting it the same color as the base, because, you know, it's brown cupcake. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to do all my bottoms. And as long as I have the right consistency of paint and it's not really watery, I don't need to mop it and soften it right now, because I've managed to get a nice little consistency of paint going for here. But if you get little puddles or harsh lines, then of course you want to take your little soft mop and soften those a little bit. We'll let that dry for a second. And you can quite often just hit it with a heat gun, which I think we will do right now. Here's my heat gun. And then we will go and we'll do the side. They're the beginning of cupcake bottoms. Okay, so I'm going to dry those again. Normally it dries quite quickly, so I don't need to worry about it. But because I'm moving along a little faster for the video, I don't want to mess with my colors. So what we do now is we're going to deepen the shading with burnt sienna. In my stash. With burnt sienna, we're going to deepen all this shading. In exactly the same way. So this is where I start doing strange things. This is where I started playing with tints and all the painting that I've been doing with the fluid acrylics. I find that I really like how each colors over top of other colors really sort of enhance the color that's underneath. And it's the strangest thing, because I'm going to actually now go back and I'm going to put yellow over top of my cupcakes. And you'll see how much more vibrant it makes it. And I often do this. There's tints. I'll do blues over greens and greens over blues and different colors. And there's a reason. It just sort of enhances the colors that are underneath and it makes them pop. So I'm making a very watery. I don't want it, I'm not floating this. I'm going to paint it on. But I want it to be very watery because I don't want to turn it yellow. I just want to get a hue. Just a very soft tint of color. And so now what I'll do is I'll paint over the entire thing. It doesn't matter if I hit the cupcake because it's all the same color. And it just pops it a bit. And if you're not, I want to concentrate a little bit more yellow, especially where the highlight is. But it's enhancing the colors that are already there, which I think is really cool. And this all just sort of just came about with playing. And it's the fun. You can play with these colors. You play with matte medium underneath because you can always go back and wipe it off. So when I played with my tints, if these didn't work out the way I wanted them to, I'd just wipe them off and pick a different color. But now they're starting to look a little bit like the difference between this one and this one. This one's not quite as flat as this one is now. Just a play on color. This is one of the things that is very difficult to get with the regular DecoArt acrylics as opposed to the fluid acrylics. Because the fluid acrylics, no matter how much you water them down, they retain their vibrancy. They retain their color. And I'm just putting a little extra yellow into those highlighted spots. Isn't that pretty? Okay. So I'm going to dry that. Okay. And that is basically what I did on the cupcake, on the ice cream cones, is to add the yellow over top, and it just made them pop all that much more. Now as I go in, I'm going to paint all my cupcakes. I'm following the same color pattern as the ice cream except for the chocolate cupcake or the chocolate ice cream cone. I think I'm going to change, I'm going to find a different color, but it might be a chocolate one. We just don't know yet. That's the fun part of painting these, is we don't always know what's going to happen. Okay, so let's get started. So painting these is not about base coating at any point now. It's all about shading. And it's all about sort of allowing these little curly cues to be swirls, like swirls. So we're going to start by going underneath. And now this one I started with, I've decided it was my blueberry one. So it's going to be a blueberry cupcake icing. Just like ice cream, it's good blueberries. And this is the test, as we don't know if we're going to like it yet. But the blueberry, this cobalt teal hue over the yellow is just so pretty. And I'm just kind of finding out where I think I want my little swirls to be. And I'm not worried about the little hearts and stars and candies on the cupcakes right now, because they're easy to just dip dot and create something fun with them after. This is pretty. Blueberries. A little bit more paint. So I'm sticking to the underneath for now, because then I'll figure out where I want my highlights after. Yeah, so pretty. And I think, just because I'm going to add a little bit color here. Because I am going to have highlights on the cupcakes, and I want to make sure that I get those so that they look like highlights to help create the illusion. Okay. That's the blueberry one. The next one is violet, Quinacridone violet. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with Quinacridone violet. When I'm putting my paint on my palette, if I look here, especially in these strong colors like a Quinacridone violet, I find if they're a little bit on the watery side, they go on way too strong. So I do tend to blend them a lot, and I will take my brush and just kind of tap it on paper towel just to pull out any excess water, because I don't want this to be really watery. This is a very strong color. And I'll start off small. So I'm going to start off in here, because when we mop this one, it will soften. And that's what we want. We want to make sure that it softens. And by counting, cleaning that up a bit, working from my little watery puddle, and I'm going to come and I'm going to do my float down this side now. Maybe a little bit up here. See, can't really do much wrong. We're going to do white highlights when it's all done too, and that makes a difference. What other colors did I do? Oh yeah, strawberry. Okay. This one I'm thinking about yet. I think we might do I don't know. Got blueberry, grape, strawberry. I was going to do a lemon one, except that with the yellows that I've already got going, it might be too strong, but you know, you might see. Primary magenta is one of my favorite colors. I love this color. So I'm actually going to start down here again because it gives me more flexibility to wash this color out. So pretty. Let's do a lime cupcake. Some green, shall we? Do some green, see what happens. The lime cupcake. So starting with my blueberry cupcake, and I cobalt teal hue. I'm going to deepen the shading with a cobalt turquoise hue, which I think is kind of fun, and it should give us a nice little look. Let's see. You always want to make sure that you really work these floats out in your brush so that you don't end up with some really, you know, globs of paint on the tip. And I find often that my second float always goes on nicer than my first float. I don't know why that is. There. And of course a little soft mop. Once we start adding the white tips on, it's going to be really pretty. There. Then I did shade on this side. I did it mostly because that's where the shading should be, but it kind of cleaned up that little corner for me as well, because I'm sort of anticipating that, you know, the light is shining down this way a little bit. So that's that one. Now this is fun. We're going back to the violet. This time I'm going to deepen my shading with Quinacridone or dioxazine purple. And it just toned down the violet, but it made it a nice purple, which I thought was kind of pretty. Once again, a very strong color. So we're going to blend it very softly. And we'll start down here this time. And it just changes, it just tones down the violet a little bit without making it a screaming purple, which I thought it was just worked very nicely. I love the violet color, but I find it very strong. And the green is kind of fun, and I'm going to go and I'm going to get, oh, it's a green yellow, phthalo green yellow, I think would be a good color to use on here. Yeah, because it's kind of bluey green, but it's pretty green. We're going to try it, because that's what we do. We try different things, see what happens. But it's also, again, it's a darker color. Oh, it's got a beautiful tone to it. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Okie dokie. And now Quinacridone magenta over the primary magenta, which has a really pretty tone to it. Actually, I used Quinacridone red, I think. Let's try. It has a very rosy tone to it. Yes, Quinacridone red. So it got a less of a purple tone when going over the primary magenta, because I really didn't want this to take on a purple hue. I wanted it to stay with the reddish hue. Okay, all right. So now, let's see what happens with a little titanium white for highlights. And I have different things that I'll do. Sometimes I'll put yellow back over top. Depends on what I think is going to happen with these. So let's try the white. Because we definitely, the ice cream could be white. And this will work. With the white though, when you go over the lines, white will it's a very opaque color even in the fluid acrylic. So if you do go over your lines, they will blur the lines out a little bit, which is one of the reasons why I keep a pen handy as well. You just want to be careful with it. Maybe it doesn't bother you if you get the lines. I mean, to me it does. I don't know why, but might not bother some people. They don't make them go away. They just do blur them a little bit. And I'll often go over my white floats twice. I'll let them dry and then I'll come back and go over them again. But I'm not going to go over my little circles this time. I'm going to go around them and kind of wipe them off. And I'll keep my little blender handy just in case I do, because I can take it off if I get it on any of my little lines that I want to keep. And I'll just kind of rouge it off a little bit. And this brush here, my angle brush, you'll notice that instead of keeping it flat like I do with most of my shading, I will quite often work off the tip and just kind of move that paint around. And that's where the mop will come in handy if I get a harsh line. But it allows me to sort of keep the tip off of places that I don't want to get paint. Sometimes I'll even paint with it. It's really it's a neat little brush actually. Great, so we're going to let these dry. And while they're drying, we are going to go and do the final float on the muffin bottoms, the cupcake bottoms, with burnt umber. Just to darken and deepen some of that shading up a bit. Mostly underneath. More depth. And the thing with these paints too is you can just layer and layer and layer. I can keep going. I can build up colors for hours and then, really just gets darker. It doesn't change it a whole lot, but it creates more depth as I go. So burnt umber. Where? Might darken this one a little bit more. I was running out of paint. Oh, it's getting lazy. Here. Just that corner. Perfect. Okay, first. So let's go back and do our second highlight of white. And I want this stronger. I want to concentrate on some spots that I think I need. And I'm almost painting it in with the tip of my brush, but allowing it so I can still do some floating with it. Okay, so there you go. There's our highlights. And I'm definitely going to have to go back now and I'm going to touch up my lines. So I'm going to dry it. And I won't do all the lines. I'm just going to look for a few here and there that I think need just a little bump up or I feel like I've lost. I'm going to go back, show you the difference. And when I use the Identipen, I'm going to do it very, very softly, almost like dotting my lines back in. I'm not going to like push it and pull along because the line can be quite stark if we're not careful. Okay. So now we'll go back and we'll paint a few. So I'm going to start with yellow because I'm going to get the little stars yellow. Just paint it with the liner, the paint full strength. Just tap it in there. And put one star. Who knew? Okay. And then let's see. Oh, the little red heart is obviously, of course, is going to be primary magenta. But you can play around with your colors. That's the fun part of this, is you can take whatever colors you have on your palette and start creating. Okay. And then the rest is just make them different colors. And I am going to do some yellow ones because I want to bring yellow into here a little bit. So definitely going to have a couple of little yellow dots here and there on all of them. Even a couple of yellow candies. Oh, definitely some down here. And oh yes, we got to have something in violet. These are jelly beans. I don't know. I'm calling them jelly beans, and I'm actually going to float those in because they're bigger. But for all the little ones, I'm just lining them in. And I think we will have, oh, let's have a purple one down here. And the fun part of these after when I'm done is we go and add glitter over top, and that makes them even more fun. Why not? We can still do a purple one in here because it's darker. Sprinkles are always different colors. more little red ones. No right or wrong. It's a case of adding some fun colors. And I think we need the blue ones. In the darker blue. Cobalt turquoise. And I think this few. Yellow. All the little jelly beans on the bottom, I'm going to do a wash with the yellow and just basically mimic what I had done on the cupcakes. Just going to do them yellow, and then I'm going to shade some fun colors. There. Let those dry. There we go. And see, make sure I got them all. Oh, there's one up there. What color should he be? Pick a color. Green. I haven't got any green ones yet. Oh no. Good, green. That's all I do when I want to add all my details, is I just basically find a color that I'll use all the colors that I've been using in the backgrounds. Just whatever's on my palette. Oh, okay. Let's shade the, I'm going to do them all. I think they're going to be the reddish color, because I think it's really pretty. See what happens. All I do when I get to this point is just pick all my favorite colors and use those. And shade them all. Red and I think a green. I was going to do blue, but I've got a lot of blue on here, so I always gravitate towards blue. There. Just created some little candies. So now comes the fun part. It's done, but it needs glitter. So I have DecoArt's Holographic Illusions. This stuff is really pretty, except that, you know, you don't have to use it. You can use any of our little glitter paints. Glamour Dust on top of matte medium. But any glitter that you have. Got the Glamour Dust paint, fine paint. Anything that's kind of got some fun to it. In fact, I think we're going to use this holographic glitter. I just think this is really pretty. I have it on this, and I don't know if you can see it when just on the candies. Just sort of added a little something, I thought. So we're going to put the glitter. Yeah, put it on everything. So all my little candies. I missed up in here. I missed a spot. There. That's better. So I scoop up my glitter. I just got a big pile. I'm just going to scoop it up on the end of my brush. And I am going to pop it down on the candies. Just kind of around. That's okay. It dries clear. So I'm just kind of doing the whole candy area. And just put it down and just start plopping it around. It dries, but it creates a little bit of texture as well. So it's going over the candies, but I'm also going to add it onto the high points of my cupcakes. I'm going to add some up here. I like glitter. You don't have to add glitter, but I like glitter. I think it's been sprinkled with glitter. So I'm concentrating mostly on the top because that's where the glitter should be. And it's also, for those of you that had any issues with the floating of color up in there, it's where the most concentrated of colors got. So it does help sort of take it away a little bit. And you know what? Maybe a little bit over here, because this is my highest part. Because we've got it in here. And it's okay that it's textured because it dries clear. It looks white right now, but it dries totally clear. And I like that it's thick because it's kind of fun. It's got little teeny weeny shimmers in it. When it dries, you just see a hint of color. Because you know what? If you got something you don't like, you can fix it with glitter. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. And I put it on quite thick, mostly because I like the little texture and it gets lots of those little glittery things in. You can just brush it on very lightly too if you want. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to put this on. It takes a little longer to dry when it's thicker though. And the nice thing is you can go right over the black because it's not a problem. It'll dry clear, you'll see your black. And this one's called Crystal Ball. It's it's like the clear one, but it's got just hints of all these different colors that I've used in the cupcakes. Yeah, and then I'm just going to dot on these, all the little candies down below. I'm just going to dot on them. Just a little bit. There. And that's it, you guys. That is my little project. I hope you had fun. And like I said, you can pick up the free pattern packet. The worksheet is on my website. The lettering for the cupcakes and of course the lettering for ice cream is also on my website. Stamps are on my website. And have fun.